This is the Garmin Varia LT510 bike radar, and it retails for $200 US. Now this is the Magene L507. It functions almost exactly the same for almost half the price. So it's a no-brainer, right? Well, let's find out. So there's no denying that radar is cool.
Contact 20 left at 30 miles, 900 knots closure.
But also it's safe. Now I hadn't actually tried out bike radar before Magene sent me this. I always kind of assumed it was an overpriced gimmick for boring people to talk about in the pub. But after getting my hands on the L508 and just my first ride, I realized what I'd been missing out on. Now you might think, I don't need a little box to tell me there's a car behind me. I have my ears. And you're perfectly right. But first I'd say A, there are plenty of hard of hearing people out there in the world that this could be a godsend to. And B, not so fast, Maverick.
I lost him, Goose.
Firstly, these radar units can pick up a car long before you hear it. With a range of 140 meters, that's out of most people's hearing range. Especially if you're flying down a descent with the sound of your hyper freewheel spinning behind you. These radar units will pick up cars long before you do, and then you can ride appropriately, i.e. stay to the side of the road and out of trouble. Now I say it will pick up cars with an S before you do because that's the second advantage of these things. There's been a few times when I've been on the road and a car's gone past me and then I've assumed the danger was over, so I've pulled out of my lane only to find out there are actually two cars behind me.
Oh shit, there's two of them.
The sound of the second car is completely muted by the sound of the first car. Now, these radar units get rid of that problem by telling you exactly how many cars are behind you and their distance to you. Now, you have to have a head unit that supports ANT plus radar standard, but basically almost any head unit that will work with a Garmin radar will also work with a Magene radar, as radar is now an official ANT standard, so everything should play nice together. Now, the head units vary in how they display the data, but usually there's a bar added to the side of the screen which shows you how many cars are behind you and their distance to you. Different head units have different features for audio alerts or different colors depending on the speed of the approaching cars, but you get the idea. Now, after a few days with the L508, I was curious how it stood up to its Garmin counterpart, so I borrowed this 510 from a friend. I also lent him the Magene unit to see how he thought it compared. He's been using the Garmin unit for a few years, so he's got a good base of knowledge. Now, initially I tried to do some tests with two radar units behind me, one on top of the other, but the radar signals from one were interfering with the other. In this configuration, both of the units were performing worse than they were on their own. Plan B was to stand by the side of the road with the radar mounted in the same place on my bike and see how they compared. Now, this was a better like-for-like comparison. In this testing, they both seem to perform similarly. You can compare for yourselves in these video shots. Now, this isn't a 100% scientific test, as different cars have different radar profiles and they may be approaching at different speeds, etc., which may be giving one a slight edge over the other, but from what I saw, the two units functioned essentially the same. The L508 is actually the first non-Garmin bike radar on the market, so kudos to Magene for that. In terms of specifications for the L508, claimed battery life depends on what mode you're in, but it ranges from 6 hours at the shortest to 16 hours maximum, which is pretty much in line with the Garmin. The actual light on here is 20 lumens compared to 29 lumens on the Garmin, so slight edge to the Garmin there. But I think in terms of brightness, 20 lumens is enough for a rear light. Speaking of light, the L508 also has an accelerometer in there, so when you're braking, it can also double function as a brake light, which I don't think you'll find on the Garmin. The light detects when you're slowing down and lights as a brake light. Pretty useful, but you can always turn it off if that's not your thing. Now, using the same accelerometer inside, the unit also has an auto sleep and auto wake up function. So when it detects no movement for 5 minutes, the whole unit goes to sleep and it wakes up again when you move the unit. The Magene unit will detect vehicles with a relative speed to you of between 10 and 120 kilometers an hour. So it will detect practically everything apart from those pesky MiG-28s.
MiG-28s, no one's been this close before.
Now, if you're into customizing everything, you can actually connect to the radar with a Magene utility app. There you can really go to town on things such as setting custom flashing patterns for the light, etc. You can also turn the radar on or off for different modes. For example, if you're doing a night race or a group ride and you just want the light on a low glow with no radar, you can set that in the app. The whole unit is IPX7 waterproof. It's charged via USB-C in about 3 hours and comes with a mount that's compatible with both round and aero seat posts. So yeah, my 1 month or so testing the unit has been largely uneventful. It just does exactly what it says on the tin. For those who've never considered radar, I definitely think it's worth considering. It's starting to change how I ride. For example, usually if you see a pothole in front of you last second, you don't dare to swerve around it without first looking over your shoulder, by which time you've probably already hit the pothole. Now with this on me, I have confidence that there is no car behind me, and if I see a pothole or anything, I can just go straight into the other lane. Now, the radar isn't a replacement for your common sense, so I don't recommend getting cocky and suddenly riding like you're invincible. That's a sure way to end up dead.
Bingo, Maverick's dead. You're out of there, kid.
For those who've always wanted a radar but thought the Garmin was a bit pricey, I really do think this is a no-brainer. It does essentially the same job as the Garmin, and in some cases more, but for a lot less money. It's good to see Magene back doing electronics after a few weird forays into other products. This is the core of what Magene do, and they do it well. Good technological digital gadgets. Regarding availability, I'll see if I can find some reliable links and put them down below. There's an official AliExpress store for Magene, so I suggest that one. Magene seems to be relying on a dealer distribution model in some markets as opposed to direct to consumer. So in some places you can't get them directly from Magene, you have to go through a dealer. As for the longevity of the product, well, it's hard to say this early on, but I'll update you this review if something goes wrong. If you did like this video, and if I may have saved you some money, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future money-saving tips. Anyway, everyone, make sure you stay safe out there. These things are not a replacement for common sense, but they do keep you safer. Okay? China Cycling, out.
You've lost.